Open Source Cranio is a different approach to how craniosacral therapy is taught and learned. Different schools have their different focuses: biodynamic, biomechanic, integrated, distance. But when it comes to craniosacral therapy training, they all follow the same model. My name is John Dalton, and I've been a craniosacral therapist since 1993. I founded the Australian Institute of Craniosacral Therapy. I developed the first craniosacral therapy diploma to be directly accredited by the government, meeting the same rigorous competency-based standards as other vocational trainings. I lecture internationally in craniosacral therapy. I produced the Craniosacral Therapy Masterclass series. I've written a number of books, one of which was directly written for people who are receiving craniosacral therapy. It's called Why Do We Get Sick? Why Do We Get Better? A Wellness Detective Manual. And I started Open Source Cranio in 2005. The purpose of this video is to give you an overview of what Open Source Cranio is about. The main points being to shift the focus in training from information to assessment, to make training information more freely available, to foster craniosacral therapy in countries with high trauma but little access to training, to build a culture of competency-based learning regardless of the approach, whether it's biodynamic, biomechanical, and to encourage mentorship and mentor assessment rather than the big classroom style of teaching that's currently used. I borrowed the term open source from the computing world. Open source software is code that's publicly accessible. Anyone can see it, modify it, share it. It grows through collaboration, peer review, and community. Craniosacral therapy training, on the other hand, usually makes students pay for the information and demonstration. And there's not much focus on assessment, and the result of that is inconsistent training outcomes, as it's called. And that weakens the value of craniosacral therapy. Because here's the problem. Not focusing on assessment produces therapists that don't get the results they want, and they don't know why. They feel they can sense the potential, but they can't get the results they want. And because their trainers weren't assessed either, they don't know why their students are not getting the results either. When I went through the process of getting the craniosacral therapy diploma accredited with the Australian government, I underwent a radical transformation as a teacher and the way I understood how people learned, and particularly how people learned craniosacral therapy. At first, I taught the way I was taught, focusing on the poetry, the mystery, and the art of the work, all of which is beautiful, but it's not very helpful for learners, because what I thought was assessment wasn't really assessment. I came to see that craniosacral therapy is fundamentally a skill, and the best way for that skill to be learned is through competency-based learning. Now, competency-based learning is a big subject, which I'm not going to go into in this video, but I will in another video. But suffice it to say, it's the difference between knowing how to drive a car in theory and getting your driving license because you passed your driving test. Open Source Cranio shifts the focus in craniosacral training from big classrooms to an apprenticeship model. So people wanting to learn to become craniosacral therapists find a craniosacral therapist that they aspire to be like, someone that inspires them, that gets the sort of results that they would like to get, and then they apprentice themselves to that therapist, as it were. And they both use the training materials available on opensourcecranio.com for what's in training terms called the chalk and talk stuff. The information, the physiology, the anatomy, the demonstrations. Again, all that is on opensourcecranio.com. And then also on opensourcecranio.com are all the assessment tools that the mentor can use to help the person who's learning become a competent craniosacral therapist. The motivation for Open Source Cranio is to provide craniosacral therapy training, which is very focused on trauma relief, where trauma relief is needed most. So by making the craniosacral therapy training materials available on opensourcecranio.com, it means that people in those countries can get access to training, and then all they need is mentorship. So the idea is to increase healthcare and get trauma relief in places where trauma relief's needed, and then also provide jobs for those people who train to become craniosacral therapists. Can you become a craniosacral therapist from a website? No, not at all. But you can get the same or better information and demonstrations as you would in a big class of 40 people with one teacher and a few assistants. You'll get that and more because you can watch it and rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it, and you and your mentor can both refer to it. So you can get you can get as good as what's available now and better. So that's the rough overview of Open Source Cranio. If it sounds like something you'd like to get involved in, whether you want to avail of the training materials, whether you want to become a mentor yourself, whether you're trained and you're in practice and everything's going great and you would like to mentor people, or whether you're a school and you want to contribute your own training materials as well. It's open source. So all that is, if you go to opensourcecranio.com, and get in touch.